calling us out as a society, people. I'm just saying how it is. I'm Gina Murdoch here, the founder of Lead with Love. We exist to shift culture from fear to love. On my left, Sarah Herron. She's the founder of She Lift. Did anyone see The Bachelor season 17? I'm not a TV person. I don't even know how to work my TV, but apparently Sarah was killing it on The Bachelor. America's sweetheart. Amazing. In the center here, Ksenia. How do you say her last name? Adulova. Incredible being. Ksenia was here last year as an influencer. This time she was doing her own workshop and she just kicked some butt. How podcasting
was in the workshop?
Anybody in the workshop? Yeah, look at that. All right, and Rosie Acosta on the far left here, gorgeous being, inside and out, a fellow student of Yoga Rupa Rod Stryker. That's where I met her, and I was immediately captivated. I've been a guest on both of these ladies' podcasts, and I'll just say, Sarah, one day is maybe going to put me on.
We'll get there.
Yeah!
I promise.
So our topic today is badass women in the spotlight, and Gretchen Blyther, you guys, is here in spirit. We love this woman, and I'm just filling in. So, thank you. I want all of you, we have sort of a theme. These women all have a platform of hundreds of thousands, if not more, viewers in their podcasts or their Instagram feed. So they're people that have an influence on society. And in some ways they're called influencers, but I don't love that term. I don't know, you guys can comment on that a little bit. I'm just gonna start with you, Sarah. I want you to just tell a little bit about your story. And each one of these beautiful women is gonna talk a little bit about their story. How did they get to where they are? And we are going to keep it a little bit condensed, but then we'll talk about now that you are where you are, where you have a platform, you have a voice. What are you doing with that voice? So Sarah, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I think like the quickest way I can say it, there's no short condensed version for anyone, I'm sure, but the question I get asked the most is, why did you go on The Bachelor? And the truth, which I didn't actually even learn or realize until many years after, was that because my confidence and self-esteem was so low that I didn't believe I could find love without the help of a production crew. I didn't believe I was worth it. I didn't believe that anyone could fall in love with me without a scriptwriter telling him to. And it wasn't until, obviously I did not find love on the show, and it wasn't until I came home after and realized I had to love myself first before anybody else could love me. And so I spent several years connecting with the outdoors and returning home, skiing. I actually learned to ski on this mountain and really discovered my confidence through my physical ability. And growing up having a physical difference my whole life, I felt like I can't ski. I only have one arm, so I'm not even gonna try. And I just limited myself from the very get-go. And once I learned that I actually was able to ski and hike and stand-up paddleboard and do all of the things that are now my favorite hobbies, I realized that there must be women out there that need that confidence too. So this is a long way of saying that after 6 years of working on that self-esteem and personal confidence, I decided to start a nonprofit called She Lift. And She Lift's mission is to empower young women with physical differences to discover their confidence through outdoor recreation. And we host retreats, and we have a very strong online community of women with physical differences connecting and lending mentorship and advice to one another. And my goal is just to help them see that they aren't alone in their obstacles and they are worthy of love and deserving in a place.
That is so awesome. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I want to welcome one of the scholarship recipients from She Lift. Thank you for being here. It helps us, to just be in the surroundings where Chris Waddell was here in a wheelchair earlier on Thursday, and he was saying that oftentimes we just don't know how to deal with it, and so we avoid it. And I can imagine that makes you feel more isolated because people actually would love to talk to you and ask you about it, like, what's it like, and, awkward questions like that. And I think that in a society, I don't know, raise your hand if you agree, where we want to be loving and kind and compassionate, but often we'll take the safer choice of like, I don't want to offend that person, so I'm just going to not talk to him right now, because what if I say something? I know I put my foot in my mouth many, many times. So
right, well, and that's a good point, because actually something that we work on a lot in She Lift is many of us, those with the differences, also also don't have the tools or the support to handle confrontation or conversation or being approached. And there is a lot of just mental health around having a physical difference, issues that come up. And so part of what I want to help women in She Lift is to arrive to a place of compassion when they are approached by somebody with questions rather than defensiveness or feeling attacked or like embarrassed. I want people to own their story and be okay talking about it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Ksenia, share a little bit about how you started Breakfast Criminals, where that came from, and now the new platform, Woke and Wired. I know I have a heart bowl. I don't know if you saw my video. I took a takeover, and my dog Ninja, who's our mascot, was eating out of the heart bowl. And that's just a little side. Go ahead.
I love Gina. We went to Bali together for the Love Retreat. It was incredible, as I mentioned in my workshop. So, who in this room has not had their heart broken? Anyone? Right? So, that's what happened to me. Lucky you. Congratulations. But the reality is most of us have. And from the outside, it may seem like it's a big deal. Everyone's just like, get yourself together, don't worry, you'll fall in love again. But in the moment, it seems like your world is over. And that's what happened to me. I'm from Russia, I'm an immigrant. I was creating my own path by going to school, by doing so many unpaid internships, taking any job I could just to pave that way to stay here because that was my path and purpose. And I knew that this is where I can really share my voice and create the biggest impact, even though I didn't yet know how or what. So just long story short, I lost my visa, boyfriend, apartment, job all at once. And that's when I had a choice. Either I get depressed and I pity myself, or I choose every single day to start with a mindful, nourishing ritual of nourishing myself on a physical level through a delicious superfood breakfast in a heart bowl, and on an energetic level. And that's where mindfulness comes in, and this is food and mindfulness together have really become my way of connecting to people because food is a universal language. Most of us eat 3 times a day, less or more. And once I started sharing my story and my message online, specifically on Instagram, it just resonated with people. I was doing it more for myself, to uplift myself, to remind myself there's something bigger than me. And within a year, it took off, and like I was mentioning in my workshop, I just started traveling around the world, talking about things that matter, created a grassroots fair trade movement supporting artisans around the world, and just realized that having a platform for myself really gives me the ability to support other people. And that's why I do my podcast. That's why I have people take over my account, Breakfast Criminals, every Wednesday, because it's not just about me and works for me. It's about really the bigger community. And I realize that the more I vulnerably and personally I share myself, the less about me it becomes, which sounds not logical, but that's been my experience. And I totally see social media as just a tool, nothing more than that. Like money, we decide what energy we give to it, what intention we put into it, and it's just another way to connect with people. And it so happens that there's millions of people on the internet wanting to be inspired and connected, and that's what I do. I both share my own messages of having conscious rituals through food, through crystals, through meditation and mindfulness, and I also lead workshops like the one I just led that empower you to find your own voice and feel ease around social media and feel just ignited and inspired to share your story.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and the daily inspiration. So your tagline is how you start your day is the way you live your life? Or did I just steal that? I say that all the time.
That was really good. How you start your day is how you live your life.
That's yours, right? Okay, I thought I made that up, but I guess she's so good at social media that it just sort of like, you think that you thought that thought. And it's such a great thought. And I think about it in the morning. I'm like,
Gina, you can take it. If anyone can take it, you can.
I'll be on a t-shirt next year. Lead with love. Rosie, it was such a pleasure to meet you earlier this year, and we connected on so many things, but your podcast, Radically Loved, has been around quite a long time. I'm not sure if it's longer than these ladies. I know, to me, it seems like everybody's got a podcast these days. That's not a good thing, not a bad thing. I think it's kind of great that people are out there trying to tell stories. I do believe the 3 of you have been at it a little while. What is it about your story that had you pick that name, Radically Loved, and what does that mean to you, and what did it take for you to get there?
Oh man, how much much time do we have?
35 minutes.
Well, I grew up in East Los Angeles during the LA riots. I'm a mid-90s child, and part of what inspired me to do what I do was just growing up the way that I did. I'm a child of 2 immigrants that came into this country that we lived in an environment where it was just, full of it, just like, did anybody see the Urban Yogis this morning? It was very similar to that. We grew up in East LA and then close to Watts, and so during that time there was a lot of violence, and we also grew up with this culture of not speaking and children's opinions and voices not mattering, and it was almost kind of like children were around to be seen and not heard. And so using my voice was always something I wanted to do, but I was never really taught how to do it. And, aside from being around an environment where you saw, people get shot and stabbed and a lot of injustice happening. And so that sort of created this dysfunction in my life. By the time I was a teenager, I was suffering from debilitating panic attacks and anxiety, and I was just having a really hard time dealing with life. And a couple years into that, I was getting, in trouble with the law, and I was basically living up to the predispositions of my environment. I was going to be another statistic, and the way that we were raised and taught was that it was about 80% chance that you were going to become part of the system. Like that was just what your sort of inheritance was going to be. And so I got, I had a pivotal moment where I got faced with the decision. I was either going to go to jail, because I did get arrested for doing something that I talk about on my podcast, so you can hear what I did there. But I made a choice, to do better and to be better than the environment that I was in. And right about that time is when I got introduced to yoga through the Self-Realization Fellowship. My mom was actually having probably like a self-development moment crisis because she was dealing with me. And so I ended up going, and yoga and meditation really gave me the tools and taught me the vernacular to have context to what I've always known to be true. And it gave me an opportunity to find home within myself and to actually feel safe. And so I utilized that for many years, cut to doing a teacher training. I became a yoga teacher, and I started to teach yoga, meditation, mindfulness to people. And ideally, my goal was to bring these practices to at-risk communities. And it was from that, wanting to reach people and continue to work with other organizations, that I thought that creating a platform like a podcast, this was 2 years ago, that it would be a great way for me to just provide value and share my story and share all the things that I know to be true. And I called it Radically Loved because I come from the belief that the universe works for us and not against us. And every single one of us is special, and we all have a purpose. And if we have the right guidance and the right feeling of love, that we can all achieve our potential. And so we're all radically loved. And so my idea for the platform was really born from that knowing, and to be able to spread that knowing now to, going from 2 downloads to over 1 million downloads has been incredible.
That is incredible. Just that message of radically loved. I know at the end of your podcast, what's the question that you always ask? Or is that a secret?
Yeah, no. It's not a
On every
secret.
podcast.
I ask, how do you feel radically loved?
Yeah, and at the time I remember I just had gotten my dog, Ninja. So I was like, oh, that's why. Anyway, it's a great message, and it reminds me of Lead with Love. Every time I say that, it reminds me of what I really intend with my life. It's like, it's so in your face. She lift, it's like, hello, we're gonna lift some women up, right? And Ksenia, with Woke and Wired, I wanna just talk about, now that you have these platforms, all of you have a lot of, influence, I would say, on culture. What do you do with that platform for good? Because there's a theme in this conference around leadership, heart-centered leadership, and social impact. And I believe all of you, you're all an inspiration to me and our team, and that's why you're here. Would like to invite you to share. Now that you've gotten it's an incredible amount of work. We wanted to do a podcast last year. We still have the equipment sitting in our basement, and it's it's not that hard to talk to people, but I think once you have to do all the stuff you do to make it look good like you all do. We haven't done it yet. So tell me about, Ksenia, about the platform and how at this moment, because we know how you got there, kind of overcoming the heartbreak. Now, what do you do with this platform?
So one thing I realized, I've always been curious about something that's bigger than me. I've always, when I was a teenager, that came out as me spending weekends at book fairs, picking up books called How to Make Everyone Love You and How to Be Confident. And then as I learned about meditation and yoga and Reiki, that became my way to connect to something bigger than me and find that confidence. So I got certified in everything I could. Qigong, yoga, Reiki, you name it. And as I was getting into those practices, anyone else into healing stuff? Right? So as I was getting more into these practices, I was realizing that whatever I was sharing in the world, first I was more clear on, I was guided, and second it was landing much more powerfully with people. It's like when I spend that time, like you were saying, Gina, we spend the time connecting to ourselves, the message just gets clear and it shows up, and we're shown the way and the right people show up. So with me realizing that the main breakfast criminals coming out of meditation, and then just me taking one step after the other, that just felt like a joyful thing that brought joy into my life and to everyone connected to it. There was no strategy behind it. It was like following those breadcrumbs of what felt right in my heart. So I set out with a question. I know that in my life, those personal practices, spiritual development, being a good human, they're very connected to my business. They reflect on my money, they reflect on my Instagram numbers, they reflect on everything. So I wanted to have conversations with other incredible woke entrepreneurs, like Gina.
She said woke. You guys got that? Woke. This is like, vernacular, not everybody hears it.
Thanks,
So,
Gina.
yeah, just go ahead.
So for me, woke really means someone who does have that yearning to connect to something bigger than you. Someone who's curious, wanting to learn, and lead with love. So I started interviewing those people, and I realized there's not one way. There is not one path. There's not 5 steps or 10 steps to do to achieve anything. As long as we spend that time connecting with ourselves and we follow our intuition, what feels good, everything falls into place. And for me, it's been a struggle between strategy versus intuition. I'm always like, should I hire a business coach who helps me do Excel sheets, or should I hire a business coach that will clear out my chakras while guiding me on my next strategy? So I hear you. Raj Sisoda, right, his wife, Nilma Bhatt, co-founder of Shakti Leadership, I got to interview her on my podcast, Woke and Wired, and she sold that for me once and for all. Are you guys ready for this? Yes. So Nilma Bhatt said, instead of separating them and making them different things, why don't you use what your intuition tells you, what feels right in your body, however you describe this experience, guidance, and then put strategy on top of that to make it even more powerful, create an even bigger impact. And so that's what I strive to do with everything I do. And if along the way I can have pieces of my business give back, like I did inspired by Gina, creating a limited edition ceramic heart bowl that you've been seeing all around. I created a limited edition of 5 of them, sold them for almost $200 a piece for one little ceramic bowl, and all the proceeds went to the holistic childbirth center we visited in Bali on our retreat. So we always can do business better, and we always can find the space to give back, because then just the fulfillment is tenfold.
You know what I love about you, besides for so many things,
The accent?
besides for so many things, the accent, is when we met, I didn't get to really connect with you that much last year. I was really busy. But when we got to Bali, I just started to notice who you were even more and more, because sometimes a digital presence for somebody, it's like, oh, you think you know them because you know them on Instagram. But then you see who they are in person, and you're like, okay, sometimes that's not, the thing you see on Instagram, for instance, is not the person that you meet. Anybody have that experience? Or, maybe. It's common. But what I felt with you was even more, like the inspiration that was on your channel, your feed, is just like a smidge of the generous heart that you are. And I just want to share that with you, because it's been such a joy to know you, such a support, somebody who, is on their own path trying to build a business, but then sees us, who's a young, social, what do we call it, a social impact organization, and is like, how can I help you? And all of you have done that with us, it's sort of like, we want to help you, let's help each other. And I think that's one of the qualities of feminine leadership, and Raj talked a little bit more about that. It's not about this scarcity thing that if you, succeed more, then that means there's less for us. So I just want to honor you, and I appreciate and celebrate that story so much. So Rosie, tell us a little bit, oh, go ahead.
Last year, Gina was like, who is this breakfast breakfast chick. What is she doing
I
here?
totally didn't get it. I was like, breakfast criminal, huh? But now I'm in. I got a heart bowl. Rosie, tell us about your platform and the surprises that you've had along the way. Now that you have this podcast with over 1 million downloads, that's pretty influential. You're talking to people in their cars, on their hikes, in the driveway because they don't want to, go into the house. What is it about that platform now that you've built it that you want to do with it for good in the world? Because I know where your heart is.
Yeah, I mean, always, anytime you're a heart-centered entrepreneur or you build a platform, it's to raise awareness, right? So I love talking to people about what they're passionate about, and a lot of the times lending voice to people like Gina and Christine who are up here, or all the amazing people that we've seen on the stage, and the people that are out here that I've met just randomly talking that are doing incredible things, like raising awareness and being able to provide that value to people that can't afford to be here, that need to be able to feel their presence here at a conference like this in their car, or on their way to drop off their kids at school or something. That was always a really big driving force for me, because I even now don't really see myself as the podcast. The podcast is like its own entity at this point. It's more of a community that's been built, and they are so receptive, and it's a collective, just like this is. And I think that the more that we can sort of direct our listeners to make them feel empowered and to drive them to fulfill their passion and their dreams and to fulfill their potential, and know that a lot of the people that I talk to, there's always this undertone of overcoming obstacles. You don't have to be, you don't have to come from the place where I came from to say that you overcame an obstacle. I mean, we've heard it throughout this entire conference. We hear it through heartbreak. We hear it through, dealing with injustice. So I really feel that I think everybody is a great candidate for that radical love, and to be able to give that radical love to everyone. Yes.
I do have a question around radically loved, because I think it's a core belief. We want to connect with people. We want to feel loved. And what if you're in a situation where there's just nobody around you that you feel like loves you? I forget where I heard this earlier. Oh, Amanda, who was speaking earlier, she was just looking for somebody to say, I love you. And it was so touching to me, because I thought about it, like, what if there's not anybody in your life that sees you and says, I love you? And I know how I would answer that question, but I'm really curious for you, does it come up when you say, everybody is radically loved? What?
Well, I mean, to me, it's like, Rod talked about this when we were in our practice this morning. He said, it's like we're in our own experience, and that's home. We find that connection within ourselves to be able to cultivate that, higher power, God presence, or whatever it is, your highest self, to be able to connect to that. But that was another reason why the platform was so important to me, was because everybody needs to feel that. And I feel like if you don't, and you're alone, and you feel disconnected, which I think is what a lot of social media makes us feel, it's this tool of comparison that's constantly killing our joy, right? So it's like, how do we navigate that to really come to this understanding that we shouldn't devalue our experience in our life, and what we should do instead is honor our uniqueness and be able to feel empowered in our own self.
Now, that theme of self-love came up a lot when Sarah and I were talking, and the idea of, there is this, I would say we all believe this, I'll generalize here, but it's like that there is something inside that is a loving force you can cultivate within yourself, and then there's this magnetic quality that when you feel that love within yourself, that it does attract people toward you. I want to ask you about that sort of term of self-love, and you shared a little bit about the journey of kind of building your own confidence and feeling, which I didn't know before you got in the Bachelor, that you were in a state of sort of low confidence. You'd never know that, right, from knowing you now. And then, so that's the first part of the question, is how you got through that to get on TV, and that's like millions of viewers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's this thing, like Chris Waddell was saying, he was one of the most decorated skiers of all time, winning all these medals, he had the depression, not when he got paralyzed, but when he stopped racing and stopped having that thing. And so I'm curious if after the show, when you chose not to renew, because I know they wanted you back, was that a dip, and then how did you get through that?
Yeah, twofold. It's interesting. You're right. Many people, and still to this day, don't know that I've struggled with low self-esteem and poor confidence, and still do. I mean, I think I would be kidding myself and all of you if I sat up here and proclaimed to have it all figured out. I don't. And I think that's my most powerful tool, is to be able to help women realize that they're not alone, and that despite what you see on TV or Instagram or wherever, what channel you see people that you look up to, it's not perfect. And I think being able to express that openly and have the support of community is what really helped me move towards self-love, and really encouraged me to hike another mountain and to get on the paddleboard, and just knowing that there are people that believe in you is a really strong step towards self-love. But now about The Bachelor, what's interesting about that is it does create a very false sense of acceptance, because you go on this show and you get, to use the word radically famous overnight, and it doesn't last. And a lot of people struggle with the loss of that acceptance after they're no longer on the show. And so for me, it was really important. I experienced it too. It was really important to make sure that I was always grounded in my own self-acceptance and how I viewed myself, not the 8 million people that were tuning in just because they wanted to see me find love.
Yeah, and how real was that show?
It's interesting. It's real. I mean, it's definitely produced. It's the #1 most watched program next to the NFL. So they get it's produced, but it's real. The people are real. We'll just leave it at that.
Don't mind that. It's going to beep in a second. I want to give you guys a chance. One of the things we have really intended with this event, this summit, is that you leave with some kind of tangible tool. So not to put you on the spot, we didn't really talk about this, but I know that you are all very professional and adept entrepreneurs. Is there a tool as somebody in social media and media or marketing and teaching? What is there that you could share with people here that is something that you've learned along the way that's a valuable gift to share? And I just would love to leave it with that. If you want to start, Rosie, and we'll just move to the...
Yeah, well, I mean, I talked about this during the workshop yesterday that I taught, and it's again this thing where we devalue and compare our lives to everyone else, and it makes our life sometimes seem mundane, and we think that it's not unique or it's not important, but it is. And I think that's always been a huge thing for me to, for myself, obviously, to try to embody, but also to try and relay that to everyone else. And I talked about this earlier, how I really believe that different is better than better. And so I think that if we all really take that uniqueness that we all have and accept it and view it as a gift, then we could use that to radically change the world and continue to lead with love.
That is so good. We're going to capture that nugget.
Do you get bonus points for mentioning Lead with Love?
Yes. You guys rolling back there? Wait, where are the camera guys? Okay.
So my biggest thing that comes up is just do whatever you want to do before you're ready. Don't wait until you do another yoga teacher training, another healing, or attend another seminar. I've done that. I was like, well, I can start writing about retreats after I've gone on 10 more retreats. I've done this thing. And then I realized if I just start sharing now, before I'm ready, and I take people along on the journey, because we all have stories to share, we all have very unique original medicine to share with the world. And if we just stop letting ourselves be stopped by limiting beliefs, and we just try sharing and stop, like you said, devaluing our story, then magic happens, and you're going to be guided every step of the way. And one way to make it more tangible, just think about one thing that makes you feel connected to yourself, to your drift, to your purpose, no matter how small or big it is, whether it's a meditation or a hike or a cacao ceremony, whatever it is, find that thing and do it every single day for a few minutes. And it takes practice to connect with our hearts and to continue leading with love. It doesn't just happen. So just do it before you're ready and have a practice that connects you to your heart on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think my advice, kind of building off of what these ladies have said, is to just be unapologetically you. Like, I can't tell you how many years of my life I've wasted trying to be what other people wanted me to be, or answer things the way they wanted me to answer, or like go to dinners that I didn't want to go to. And the minute you start just like being like, you know what, I am doing this and I don't care what anyone else thinks, or I'm gonna say what I want or show what I want, truly sets you free. And that freedom is truly, I think, the key to confidence and what I could only hope for everybody ever.
That's amazing advice. Thank you three so much.